welcome back to Sharing the Love. Today we're sharing the love with the incredible and inspiring Peggy, the positive philanthropist. Welcome.
Hey, babe. Thank you
Hello.
so much for having me.
Thank you for being here. Could you describe yourself with 5 words?
Ooh,
Mm,
I'm going to go deep here. Let's get this started.
yes.
Infinite intelligence, having a
Mm,
human experience,
wow, that's incredible. What do you feel is calling out to you in this current phase of your life?
inspiration for others,
Mm,
empowering humanity, kind of creating that space where someone will watch or see me or meet me and they'll feel inspired because I
mm,
truly believe in life. It's not what we do, it's how we make people feel.
yes.
So
Wow.
that's where it's at.
Definitely. Alrighty, it's time for our love bowl. You know the
I'm
drill?
excited.
Yes, I'm excited too. Just say stop whenever you're ready.
Stop.
Alrighty. The topic for today is triggers.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Mm. What's the first thing that comes to mind when you hear the word triggers?
If you can spot it, you've got it.
Mm. What has your experience been like with triggers?
Definitely creating that self-awareness. Years ago, I would be triggered and unconscious about it. So it was kind of like reacting, reacting, reacting. And through my personal development journey, healing, kind of coming back to self and understanding my truth is that it's not a reaction, it's how we respond to something, right? Creating that space for yourself rather than feeling it in your body and just reacting, sit with it, feel it, and then respond calmly if you can. That's
Yes.
definitely like it's an ongoing thing. I think being a human and experiencing life, it's our job to be triggered and experience triggers and emotions so we can bring it
Mm.
up, see it, give it love, bring it to the light, and transmute it.
Yeah, wow. I mean, the thing that stood out to me in your answer is the unconscious part. And it seems
Mm.
like a lot of us are going through life nowadays not even conscious of what is going on. So we end up feeling emotions and we're like, where is this coming from? Why am I feeling this way? It's because there's a lack of that self awareness. And what it truly comes down to, as you were saying, it's not that we're saying we don't want to have triggers at all. If anything, these are tells, these are signs, these are teachers if we choose
Mm.
them to be. But of course, that comes again, as you said, with creating that space, creating that intention. As Viktor Frankl says, freedom lives in that space between stimulus and response. And when you see that power in that I don't want to react, I want to respond, your whole life changes.
I just got goosebumps then.
Yeah.
That is some truth.
My next question for you is, how has your perception of triggers evolved over time?
I think from a younger age, I didn't understand it. I
Mm,
just thought that's just what happened, as I spoken to before, just being unconscious about it.
mm,
And it kind of wasn't until I started that healing journey, like many of us, we're unconscious until we become conscious.
mm,
And when we become conscious, it's like a door's just been opened, right?
yes.
And being triggered, I used to, at the beginning of my healing journey and journey back to self discovery, I would make it so much about myself.
Mm,
And I guess it is about yourself, but there was kind of this level of shame and negativity around it. But through growing and evolving and learning, when a trigger comes up now, I'm like, oh, what am I about to learn? What am I about to break through? What am I about to experience? Why is this keying in? And now I kind of have this higher perspective, like when a trigger comes up, I feel that. I feel that and I get curious. Like triggers are purely invitations to something that has happened usually in the early years of our childhood that's just become one of our programs.
mm,
And as an adult, I believe personally, it's now my job to see those triggers, move through them, transmute them so that life can become a lot easier. They're always going to be there as well. There's kind of like this acceptance piece I have now where I'm like, yeah, I'm triggered right now. Like, what is going on? Let me feel into this. Let me get curious. I now allow a lot of spaciousness when I do have a trigger. Years ago, I would kind of distract myself and get really upset by it. Whereas now I'll literally just sit down and go, oh, I'm feeling this. Like, where is this in my body? What's coming up? Why is it coming up?
Wow. That was quite value packed. And so, if I can take a step back and just to re articulate the steps of it, you start off with not being conscious, and a big part of it is trying to get that awareness. However, our instinct is to avoid it, our instinct is to run away. And then that acceptance piece within that spaciousness brings us to a place in order to be curious, to see, where does my freedom live in this opportunity? How am I able to rise above? You reminded me of this session that I had with my therapist a few months ago, right? And I was telling her, I got triggered by something that I thought I was over, right? Something that happened and I thought I was like so healed from that. And I was telling her, and again, like you said, I felt that shame, I felt that disappointment. I'm like, years of healing, and I'm still doing something similar to what I was doing 4 or 5 years ago. And she said, people think that the healing is not to be triggered. But truly, the healing is to be triggered and choosing how to respond to that trigger. Because over time, when you do that curiosity, as you say, the triggers no longer have that hold over you. So it is possible that after years of training yourself and training your mind, that those triggers are no longer triggers. So
Yeah.
that is honestly 100%. I agree with what you're saying, and I agree that instead of starting to put ourselves down, shaming ourselves, disappointing ourselves, just sit with it and be like, it's okay. Because it feels like somehow, and I know you will definitely understand this, there's a level of distorted reality we live in this world nowadays, right? And people want to create this perfection, this ideal that is not real. It's not real, and no one will ever attain that kind of perfection. And so for them, not to be triggered is that perfection, right? But coming down to it and understanding and accepting that we are all humans and we all get triggered. But what it comes down to is how we choose to respond. And I think that's the empowerment bit in that.
Yeah, definitely. And I think as well, this is something I always like to drop back into is, how would you treat your little self? Like, if your little 3-year-old self was having this experience, how would you treat her? And that goes for anyone. How would you treat your younger self right now in this moment? Would you shame them? Would you get angry at them? Would you get frustrated? No, you'd have compassion. Well, I would hope you'd have compassion, and just allowing that little version of yourself to express.
I'll add to that, Peggy. I feel for people like you and I who, one, are on our healing journeys and very intentional about that and have the awareness, but also we choose what we surround ourselves by. We would like to see compassion as a natural thing, but I don't think people have that for themselves. And I think even when you say that to them, some might feel resistance, that no, I wouldn't look at my 3-year-old self. So I'll tell you, look at what would you do if your best friend came to you with that trigger? How would you speak to them? Before even going into, because there's something about, we know the ins and outs of ourselves, so we are our harshest critics. And we make things, unfortunately, harder for ourselves sometimes. And this is something I will stand up and say to every single person. And they hate it when I say that. But so much is self-imposed. So much is self-inflicted. Because it's where you put yourself, right? Again, going back to your point, is if you're going to let the trigger put you down, you are letting the trigger put you down. Or you can choose how you want to go about it, which is the compassionate way will always create a smoother journey for you. Why do you think people lack that compassion for themselves?
I think it's just a learned behavior. Generations before us, they weren't necessarily shown. It's kind of become this new thing with Earth evolving, frequency shifting into the 5D Earth. It's like humans are waking up. Yeah. It's kind of almost become a bit of a trend. And that's coming from a non-judgmental way at all. I love it. Yeah. Most people I speak to if they're not on a healing journey, they've got curiosity about it. They're curious. And the more people that are stepping into this new way of being, the more others will look at and be inspired and curious. So I think it's just where our world is headed. It's what's happening with the Great Awakening and shifting the 5D Earth. It's a part of it. It's inevitable, but some may not come along for the journey. So
Yeah, definitely. In this shift that's happening, again, it's a choice, I believe. And so many people might be apprehensive until they see, vulnerability or see this authenticity of people really taking it to the next level. Because I say that this is what helps others feel liberated, is when we liberate ourselves. Again, let's talk about the trigger, For me, if I feel triggered and I act it out, say with my sisters, right? Because the people who are closest to you, usually you feel like, okay, I'll let it run, I'd go up to them and then apologize and kind of hold myself accountable, and I would never do that in the past. They taught us, I think, growing up, that vulnerability equals weakness. But when you own up to it and realize that no, it's okay for you to be feeling these emotions. And again, every emotion is always a sign that's trying to tell you something. They're not coming out of your ass, sorry, they're not coming out of just anywhere. They're coming out of a place to come and tell you. And when we avoid them, when we don't want to listen to them, it's basically us saying, you're not important enough. You're not a priority for me. What's a priority for me is everything else outside of myself.
for someone that has got no idea, they've got no idea where to start, what a trigger is, what's happening, and they're kind of used to just reacting, I think it's important to drop back into the body, because the mind will keep going on and on and on and on.
Yes.
Body knows, the body feels, and the body keeps memory, it stores memory. When something comes up, not ignoring the mind as much, but just dropping into your body. That might be sitting down, placing your hand on your chest, taking a couple deep breaths. I feel like when we kind of ignore our triggers, that's when we can start to feel overwhelmed, and it'll get louder, and then we'll snap.
Yeah.
We might really snap. So it's creating the awareness of, when did I start feeling like this? And there's always telltale signs. Usually, I think the easiest way is to just drop into your body in that moment. In that moment, drop into your body, take a couple of deep breaths, calm your nervous system, and then you're able to process it a bit easier. Because when we're just in that reactive, we're tense, our physiology is literally like wanting to fight back. That's because we're not in our bodies, we're more in our heads. So coming back to the body.
Definitely, yeah. And that could look like anything, whether that's walking, meditation, journaling, just sitting with yourself, again, counting, till 10, or counting till 100 if you have to. Whatever that space looks like to bring yourself back, even tapping, or looking at senses, like look at what can you smell, what can you hear, what can you see. Anything, again, you're right, to bring you back to your body. Because as you were talking, you made me also realize that these triggers sometimes aren't even about something that's happening right now. Again, they are attached to emotions. A lot of the time, these emotions are based on past experiences that we've had that have been created. And so now when something happens, it brings back that memory of something happening in the past. My next question for you is, and this is a bit of a funny one, but in coaching, we love to use metaphors. So if triggers was a flavor of ice cream, what flavor would it be and why?
Maybe something sour.
Yeah.
There's something sour, like lime, or even something bitter, like a coffee flavored ice cream. And you look at it and you think it's going to be chocolate, and then it's coffee.
Definitely. And it does kind of take you by surprise. I think the underlying connotation from what you're saying is just something that you're like, what just happened right here? What just happened right now? As we're wrapping up, what's one tip or advice that you can give our audience in navigating their triggers or gaining a bit of that self-awareness?
Definitely just educating yourself. I know for myself, when I first started, coming back to my journey back to self, my healing journey, and creating that conscious awareness of why did I behave like this? Why did that make me feel like this? Or why did this experience happen? Knowledge is power. And when we can hear podcasts, read books, watch videos on YouTube about it, our mind can start to link up and understand. And I think sometimes in life, the reason we might be experiencing discomfort or a trigger is because we don't really understand it. So when we can start to educate ourselves and learn about the mind, about the body, about responding, reacting, we can come from a place of curiosity and calmness because we understand it. So I think it's about understanding, definitely educating, reading books. There's so many incredible books and podcasts out there.
I feel a huge part of what you were saying does help with the compassion bit, because once you start to understand human behavior, right, just to understand how people act and how normal it is. And I think so many times it's such a subjective experience, we think we're the only ones going through it, when in reality every single person goes through it. And really that's the point of sharing the love. It's to show that the human experience is one and the same, even though we might have very vast different experiences. I'm sure as I could relate to you, so many of our audience could. So thank you so much for that answer. What was your biggest takeaway from our conversation today?
I think it's important to have these types of conversations. There's so many people out there that haven't even begun their journey yet.
Right.
So I think it's really important to continue to have these types of conversations, whatever the topic, whether it's triggers or the body or mindset or healing. This is kind of where the power happens, because this exact type of conversation is how it started for me and how I started my journey back to self.
Yeah. It literally just takes that one person, right, to create the spark, to liberate you in a way, or to make you feel like it's okay. And now it's like, what are you gonna do about it? Because I feel so many people just stop like, okay, I have the awareness, but the real work isn't in the awareness. Great that you have the awareness, but the real work is in the repetition. The real work is in literally cementing it over and over again. Because if for 20 years you've known something and one day you realize that's not the case, it's not going to change if you're not going to put in the damn work, to do what you need to do and to get to where you want to get to and to feel the inner peace that you want to achieve in your life. Because life isn't meant to be stressful. Life is, I think you're the biggest preacher of that. Life is not meant to be this crazy feeling of tensed up and overwhelming that we see in a lot of the global population nowadays. It's peace.
Yeah.
It's finding your peace.
It becomes a devotion to self. You just devote your life and yourself to bettering, becoming better, feeling better, and doing the things you need to do.
Yes.
It's not a chore. It gets to be a devotion.
Yes. Wow, that's a wonderful way to look at it. I've never really looked at it that way, but you're right. It's like we're devoted to so much outside of us. If only we can turn that inwards. Yesterday I was a guest on a podcast, and she asked me, if you were an emperor for a day of the world, what law would you put? And I said, for everyone to look inwards. That literally, if every single person can look inward and not look left and right, we don't have greed, we don't have comparison, we don't have competition, we don't have any of these constructs that are trying to take us away from our essence, from our humanity. We are here for the interconnectedness. We are here because love is the source, and we tend to forget that. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So powerful.
Yes, you are. This is the moment that everyone will be waiting for, but where can our audience connect with you?
You can connect with me via Instagram. My Instagram handle is Peggy, Peggy, Rorke, Rorke, and I'm also on TikTok, Peggy the Positive.
Yes, I love it. And everyone needs to check this woman out, because she is a soul of brilliance, a soul of truth. She is saying everything that we are hearing inside here, not even inside here, but that we're not ready to admit. And it's time for us to really make that change, because as you said, the world is changing. It's time to shift. It's time to really upskill, up level, really get into a place where we are our higher self and no longer operating from ego and fear. Thank you so much for joining. It's been an honor and a privilege. Thank you for our audience for tuning in. This is Sharing the Love. Please like, comment, subscribe, let us know what resonated with you, and we'll see you again in our next episode.